Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, the podcast for established church leaders by established church leaders. That's Sam. You're supposed to say, and that's Josh.
And that's Josh.
Hey, and welcome to the show. All right.
I got caught up looking at myself in my own camera.
Yeah, he was giving everybody the peace sign. So we've got a pretty interesting episode some time ago.
Pretty interesting. It's like
interesting.
Next, hit the next button. No, this is a good one.
This is a good one. Some time ago, we here at Second Conway and Greenbrier, we moved our offices offsite. We don't office on our church campus. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow in which the guy was like, I just assume I'm going to 2600 Dave Ward. And I said, no, you're not. You're going downtown. That's where our West Conway campus is. So we're going to talk about the pluses and the minuses and the strengths and the weaknesses of officing off-site. But before we do, we have some off-site resources that could help you and your church.
Yeah, you want to go check out Church Teams. Church Teams offers the best in-class church management software systems. Boyd Pelly and his crew at Church Teams have really built the best in class. And they offer church management software systems, which is really operations management for your church, which every church needs. And I love what they do because they take so much off of the plate of pastors. There's a lot of things that you can use their systems for that frees you up to do the things that you do well. You know, things like communicating to your church via text. And once you get that system set up, man, it makes it so easy to get word out about things that you need to tell your church. But they do a lot of other things as well. They can help schedule volunteers. They can help with giving, check-in systems. They really do it all. They've got plans starting as low as $37 a month for churches under 200 people. You can add text to church for $10 and online giving for $20. And they are scalable. So, if you're a larger church and you have more needs when it comes to technology, they can scale with you. So they offer a full slate of software systems. You can pick and choose what you like. They are really good at what they do. So go to est.church to get their offer, which is 2 months free. Fill out the form, and I'm sure Boyd and his crew would love to hear from you. So est.church is the place that you can get that offer. Thank you, Church Teams, for sponsoring the show.
That's right.
All right. So you're offsite. I'm onsite.
Yeah,
so
I'm not at the church campus right now. Not even right now, as we record this, and I like it. Now, let me just go on the record here. Situationally, I think it was a good idea for us. I still think it was a great idea for us. I don't know that I would push any other churches to do this or even suggest it, but there were a number of circumstances that led us to this, and it has worked out phenomenally well. Now, all of my career up until moving my office was at the church's campus. So I understand that. I honestly don't see a lot of downsides to that at all. There's nothing but upsides to that. Maybe we could come up with some, but yeah, there's some downsides and upsides to moving off campus. Yeah,
and we'll dig into that here in a moment. But you know what I really want to do? You know what this, I think would be a lot of fun for me to do for everyone? I'm going to take everyone. I am in my office on site. I am at the church on the third floor of the education building. And I just want to take everyone on a quick tour of my office. So I will narrate this for those of you who are listening.
You're going to have to narrate. Yeah, it's radio.
And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you get to see. So I have my blackboard behind me, which is a rather significant blackboard. I use chalk to write some notes up there. I've got lots of books. So they're all my books. And there's my door back there that every door in our church had a different lock. And so we never found the key to this door. So I have to tell people, don't lock my door because I won't be able to get in. There's some hurricane damage that is still there, which we need to get fixed. And part of the fun of being on site is that, particularly if you don't have a lock on your door, is that people play jokes on you. And so I got ballooned recently. And
I was
my
wondering,
office-
why are so many balloons in your office?
I don't know. I have no idea who did it. We have a culture of practical jokes here at West Bradenton, and so there is absolutely no telling who blew up balloons to fill up my entire office, and I have not had time to pop them, so they're just sitting on the floor.
Yeah, it's not exactly your entire office, it's just the floor. Do you remember did you ever watch New Girl with Winston? He would make practical jokes. He'd say, "You just got Winstoned." And what it was just a practical joke that didn't really make sense. That's what I feel like. There's like there's quite a few balloons on the floor in your office, and you just got Winston. You don't know who did it or why.
Yeah.
There's some balloons in your office. Yeah, so let's talk about this for a second. I want to share with you the circumstances that led to us pretty quickly. We were running out of adult small group space. That's the bottom line. And we were already in 3 service hours, 3 small group hours. We had some rooms, but they were very small. And we had a number of offices that were quite large. With that, we also had a growing staff. Most of the staff were in what used to be, we had this old house, or this house that is on our campus. That was our office complex. And there were people that were in closets that used to be just walk-in closets. They had no windows. So it would get really drab in there, kind of dark. It was affecting people's moods. If you had a normal size room that was the size of a bedroom, a large bedroom or something like that, maybe the old living room or the old garage, then there would be 3 or 4 staff in it. And so you just didn't have a good space for any offices. But we started looking around and we go, this space would actually make 7 or 8 great small group rooms and good size. And once you put that over 3 hours, you're talking about, 21 small group rooms. And so then we started to look into the finances of it. And in order to build more small group space, which was kind of the push at the time, we wanted to build some more. You're talking multi-million dollars. At the very end of what we were needing and those sort of things, it was going to be $6 to $8 million. So that's just not something we wanted to spend at the time. We were coming out of COVID. We were growing very rapidly. So we started to think about Offsite. Here's the bottom line for me. Your offices do not, if you're just talking nickels and dimes, nickels and noses, that sort of stuff, people don't connect to a church and invest in a church and grow from a church because your offices are nice. That's just not ever. I've never seen a survey where it's like, I joined this church because they had really great offices. But they do connect with on-campus small groups, with the space for on-campus small groups, with those sort of things. So small groups is a priority. So that led us to go, look, we can do with smaller off-site offices, that sort of stuff, but we need this. And so 3 years, $300,000 over the 3 years, that's what we ended up doing, which $300,000 is a lot of money. However, significantly cheaper than $6 million. And it opened up quite a few small group spaces to where our church could grow. And it did. It worked. Our church grew. People came and they connected to these small groups. We actually moved more downtown. Our campus is to the west. And we moved downtown. So those were the circumstances. I don't know a lot of other circumstances other than you need to expand. I was talking to a church this last week in which they're running out of children's space. They've got too many children, which is a great deal and a great problem. And we started talking about how good their offices would be. Their offices would make great children's space. It already has glass up half of the door. There's windows in every one of the rooms. It'd be great. So they're actually contemplating that. And but what they're kicking around is because they don't live in an area that has like a downtown. We're in a historic office building. We're on the second floor, that sort of stuff. If you're not in a community like that, maybe it's rural and doesn't have a lot of office space, they're actually thinking about just officing in their lobby. I've seen very large churches. I knew a church of 2,000 in which the entire staff did not have an office. Not the pastor, not the student, not one single person had an office. When you join their staff, they hand you a new MacBook and a backpack and an iPhone and said, go find somewhere to sit. That's your office. And when you think about it, that was one of the things is like questioning, do we need offices? Now, I don't have the books you have. I have 13,000 digital books. So my books go with me wherever I go. But if I had a bunch of books, I would need that space. You know what I'm saying? So questioning this older school mentality of, I need a place where all my books are, where I'm going to go and study. That just is not, it's not necessary. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not necessary anymore.
I think you bring up a very good point. Your situation is very different than ours. You needed education space is the bottom line. It's an old school term, but you needed education space, and it was far more beneficial to your church and to your people. By church, I mean your people, that not everyone has their own office on site, and boy, it's going to be a whole lot cheaper for us just to get some off-site space. That makes sense. That's strategic. It's good stewardship, and it's wise. Our situation is actually the opposite. Our parking lot's so small that we didn't need all this education space. We've got more everyone in our church pretty much everyone on our staff pretty much has an office, and we still have rooms that we could put more small groups in. Just because we have 5 buildings that are all connected now in a very weird way, because that's what churches do. And one of the buildings is a 3-story education building, and it's massive. So we've got total on campus 62,000 square feet, which is not giant, but it's larger. I would not want any more space. Since we have all this space, we figured, well, let's just give everyone an office, and then we have we don't have required office hours, but people are in the like our support staff is in Monday through Friday, but our pastors are usually in 2 to 3 days a week. So, it depends on the week. I'm in my office about 3 days a week doing things, and if you're always in your office, you're probably not shepherding well. But we decided that we needed to be on site because of the way our ministries run. Everything's Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday. So it made sense for people to have offices to be. That's where the administration hubs of their ministries are in these offices. Like our children's minister actually has a very large 2-room office, but that's a ministry hub. I mean, that's where the meetings are. That's where they're getting things together. That's where they're doing their huddles. So for our model of ministry, and with the space that we had, we would be wasting space if we weren't trying to figure out ways to get people to create these little ministry hubs in their offices. So for us, it made a lot more sense to be on site. If I was in your situation, I would have done exactly the same thing. Ironically, at my last church, we decided that we were going to stop leasing some storefront space and buy a building that was more connected to our campus, because the lease was so crazy expensive. I was like, we can actually buy this building that's a block and a half away, and it's going to be cheaper for us to put everyone there than to keep leasing this storefront space that's so expensive, because it's commercial real estate. So in that case, we actually took people from an offsite office and moved them into what ended up being part of the church campus.
Yeah.
So it comes down to your particular situation. What's the best stewardship? What's your ministry strategy? That idea of giving, that church that you mentioned, the large church with here's a laptop, figure out where to sit. I don't know that I necessarily like that, but if it works for them and that's their culture, hey, more power to them. Yeah, I dig it. So I think once you see that extreme, and I saw that back when I was a student minister, and my friend was the student minister there, and so we went over one day, and he was showing me the campus, and I was like, wait, y'all are where is everything? And they just had a unique way of utilizing space, and it just worked for them. And so when you see that extreme, here's your laptop, go find a place to sit. And in a lot of these modern churches, the lobbies they feel like giant coffee shops with lots of pod seating. There's music going, there's high-speed internet and stuff like that. So it's really no different than officing in a coffee shop. It's just more quiet. I think there's a number of other benefits. Really what I'm trying to get with this episode is for our listeners to put it in the mindset of, hey, that's a possibility. If we should ever need to build space,
I've seen a number of churches just going in these massive debts when I'm like, there's a ton of square footage that's sitting right over there that like you heat and cool this entire building because y'all didn't think through that originally. And it's only for 6 of you on these days, that sort of stuff. Also, in some urban areas, the shared workspace, the ability to like say we're going to rent this office, but then we've got all of these features in this office. I think that's good. Another thing to think about that could be helpful is sometimes, like what you said, if you're just always in your office, then you are probably not shepherding well. Well, that's likely true. Another thought is if you're just always in your office, you're isolated. There could be feelings of loneliness, and sometimes you just look up and that's just the rhythm that you're in now. And I know quite a few, let's say normative size or smaller churches where a pastor likely will sit in a big empty building by himself more than half of the week. Now, let's say he's out shepherding and doing stuff like that. In that case, I would just say socially and emotionally, it might be good to offsite. Get closer to people, get closer to the community. Here's some intangibles that we discovered. Is just the walk from my car to the office now, because I park in public parking downtown, I bump into people all the time. I'm waving at people that are passing the street. People are just pulling over talking. We're walking down to lunch. There's several lunch spots around here. We're walking to one of those, and there'll be 2 or 3 of us, and we'll bump into a church family, and we get an opportunity to spend time with them, or the mayor, or somebody from the school district, because there's just that vibrancy, that flow of being right in the heart of our city. Those are helpful. We also have signage right at the busiest downtown intersection of our town is this signage for a very large church that's on the west side of town. So there is some benefits that you often don't think about because we just assume in most settings, whether you need it or not, well, the pastor office is at the church. And so I would say those are the benefits. What are some of the benefits of being on campus, though?
There are several.
Sure.
We have Tuesday is our day that we require people to be here. So it's basically all day Tuesday where you can just be popping into each other's offices. Now you have that too, obviously. You're off site. So we still do a hybrid work model where it's part work from home, part office hours.
Yeah.
We don't when I say required office hours, it really is just we try to schedule all of our meetings on Tuesdays that's when everyone's there. And then obviously Wednesdays, we have Wednesday programming. So usually by noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, most everyone's in the office on Wednesdays because we have Wednesday night, programming. But other than that, there's still a lot of work from home. But there is benefits to on-site. It's a little easier for me to do counseling because the support staff's here. You don't have to worry about, those issues of appropriateness, who you're alone with, that sort of thing. We have cameras in every office. I know that's a big debate. Should you put a camera in your office? We got cameras everywhere at West Bradenton for obvious reasons. And I don't care if you don't want a camera in your office, I got all sorts of questions for you. So we have our camera system here, to where that's helpful to us. We don't record audio, obviously, just video, but so there's some security reasons. And I just think from the church's perspective, there's a sociological principle of that's the pastor's office. There's that feeling of home. That's where my pastor is, even if you're out doing your thing. If you're in the community like you should be, and you're in the office 2 or 3 days a week. But when people are there Sunday and Wednesday, they're just walking by, even if you're not at your desk. It's like that's where my pastor is. I do think there is something to that. I don't want to make too much of that. And if you're limited on education space, then please give up your offices. Small groups are way more important than personal offices. Way more important. But sociologically, I do believe that it's beneficial to people to have their own office on site. I think that there is some psychology there. I think that you can overdo it, and then there is the downside of people hiding in their offices. Like, they shut the door, they're there, but they're not really there, and you have no idea what they're doing behind that closed door. Are they really working or not? So there are downsides, but those downsides are pretty much just, you got to hire well. If somebody's abusing the privilege, then they're going to abuse the privilege doing whatever, wherever their office is, whether they have one or not. But I do think that there is that sociology behind having an office on site that does help. I don't want to make too much of that, and it's not one of those things that I think is like a primary issue at all. But when you're hiring somebody, onboarding them, they're a new employee, a new staff person, being able to say, here's your office. There's not a prestige factor to that, but there's a level of importance that you feel, particularly for people who are new. Now, if you've been at the church 10 years, at that point, you're like, yeah, just put my office wherever. I don't care. But I also moved. Man, I moved before we did our renovation, my office was big. It was beautiful. It was on the first floor, and it was right next to the main entrance of the sanctuary. If you were walking in the sanctuary, you had to walk by my office. And that was the biggest pain, because I love my people, and I'm an extrovert. So when people walk in and they're interrupting me, I'm like, oh, hey, come on in, let's talk, But it was very difficult for me to get any work done. So I actually, by happenstance, just ended up on the third floor because we made commons area out of all those old offices. And then we spread out all our offices all over the campus, and particularly in the ministry area. So student offices in the student ministry area, children's offices in the children's ministry area. I'm on the third floor now, and it's actually been really helpful because people still know where I am, but it's harder for people just to pop in. So I think there's a balance there, and I do like having an office on site. If it went away, one, my wife's not letting me bring my books home, so I have no idea where they would go. Yeah. But two, I really enjoy being here. There is an emotional attachment that I have to this building, and for me, it's a healthy thing. Like if I had to give up my office for a small group, sure, not a problem.
Right?
Like I'd do it. Thankfully, we don't have that issue. But I think that there can be a healthy level of emotional attachment to rooms in the church offices, and it can be very positive for the church.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot to respond to there, but I think that you're right as far as the thing I do miss is I love our church campus. I love the beauty of it. It's on this 50 acres, these big mature trees. My old office had this, because it used to be one of the bedrooms, right, for this old house, and it had this sliding glass door, and I could slide open that door on cool weather days and step out into this gorgeous wooded campus. And I could see the sanctuary building and the student center building, and there was a playground not too far from my back office door there. And while the preschool would play out there, I could hear children laughing, and I loved that. There was also
my office oversees the preschool and the playground. I absolutely love hearing them out there.
Yeah, and so we had a tradition as well where the students would come by and do this little thing. So anyways, I missed that part. Some of the other things you said, I just, you and I often think very differently about officing and staffing and things like that. I don't like offices spread out. I like them all together. In fact, when I got to second, there were some in this building, some in that building. I said, nope, everybody's together. We got to move back together. I don't like all that spread out. And so we put them all together. The other thing is, that's really something I would like. You really got to press into. That's where the pastor is. When we think about that biblically, it is more of this shift towards this corporate professional job that we do. That's the pastor's office. That's where he sits. That's where he is. And when it's taken to the negative, and I know that's not, you're putting it on the healthy side, and there are healthy benefits to it. There's a security to it. There's an expectation. If I need help, where, like the police officers don't move around. The fire station doesn't move around. That's where I go when I need that kind of help, right? So I get that. Now, what I would say is, we still have that too. I'm downtown. I'm much more accessible to the whole city than I was over in that location. But I get it. Where it pushes back is that idea that, like, we had one gentleman that was upset about this, and he said, that's where, what if I need to come talk to you, that's where, what if I want to stop by and talk to you? I said, well, dude, you can stop by downtown. Also, I've been the pastor here 3 years and you've never stopped by once. And what it did is it pushed into this reality of, he wasn't talking about him needing help. And he wasn't talking about any sort of veneration or respect for me and my position. What he was talking about was, that's where I put you, and that's where I want you to be until I need you. When I jerk your chain, I want to know exactly where you are. So, and that's an unhealthy sort of caging in of staff that we sometimes do.
It's a control issue.
Yeah, without thinking about it.
Yeah, and so that's a good point. And I'm just going to say that this is one of those discussions that there's really no right or wrong answer. Often
Absolutely.
you and I debate, and we try to get to a right or a wrong answer. But if let's just say you're at that church where you have a culture of control, and those offices are there because we're watching your hours. You have to do this in this way, and I want you there at my beck and call. So if that's the case, you may need to move your office situation or change your office situation to break that culture.
Mm-hmm.
So it could, for us, we don't have any of those cultural problems. So we just did what was the best for our ministries within the constraints of our building. So your building is what it is. There are certain constraints to it. That's a different thing than I need to change the culture. It could be that these offices spread out all over the place, people working from home or what have you. Like, man, we need to be a little more centralized. Like, we have a cultural problem. So you want to bring everyone together to solve that cultural problem. That geographic proximity may help you. The flip side could be true as well. Like, man, there's an overbearing culture. We need to free people up. We need to get them away, more away from each other.
Right.
There's too much going on here. So this is very much what are the physical constraints of your campus, and what is your culture, and how can you find the wisest way to do your office space within those paradigms? Well,
sure. And I would also say, look, if you've got the space, it's a stewardship issue. Just use the space. There's no sense in paying for space that goes up. But so there's just a lot of things there. The other downside is we are a couple miles from our campus. And so those ministry, like you have the students in the student ministry space and stuff like that. On Wednesdays, most of our staff just isn't here. Just they're over on the campus because they're prepping for that night or they're prepping for Sunday. And there's just things you cannot do. You got to do. Now, I would argue you had to go from your office to that space anyways, because we are over 3 buildings that are not connected. So, yeah, but that was walkable, and now you're drivable. But there's those situations. I want to share with you 2 things that I've heard, though. These were kind of cool. 2 things. One thing is pretty simple. I've heard of a number of same denomination churches that had just a few staff, right? Just very few staff at all of these churches. They actually got together and moved all of their office. They officed all together. And so they had their own space. It was an older church that they kind of just took over associationally. And that's where everybody off. They had one receptionist, one copy machine, one break room. They had their own office, their own space that was lockable. They had a meeting room, a conference room, but there was collaboration. There was synergy. You didn't feel lonely. You had somebody to go to lunch with. You had somebody to talk to. I thought that was a really unique, kind of cool idea on saving some money, but also plugging in some of that social element that is not necessarily in a lot of churches. Because like I said, a lot of small churches, we may be a lot of ministers' only social interaction, listening to a podcast every week about ministry. So I really love that push of making sure that you're bumping shoulders, you're around other people. So that's the first idea.
I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea. Also, in our tribe, there are associations that have buildings, and some of them, I won't say all of them, or not. I won't even say many, but some of them have that available space to do something like that. Yeah. So I never really thought of that. Yeah. But if you are a smaller church and you want to team up with other smaller churches, share the cost of an office, that sounds like an excellent idea.
Yeah. Last idea, then, this was a different setting, but a church was actually They're in a sprawling urban sort of context, and they're selling the corner space of their land there. They're building now get this, they're going to build the first floor is a coffee shop, modern coffee shop, outdoor, all that kind of stuff. Behind is pickleball courts, and the upstairs, they're actually building a shared workspace. So they will office in that space, but they're building it with a mind to lease out several of the offices with certain guidelines and things like that. That's actually going to fund the coffee, the pickleball club, essentially, and then the office space upstairs gets them a now that's on their campus. It's right on the corner of their campus, makes it a destination for people in the community. And I love that, turning some of your space into something. And look, they're largely working with a developer. The developer is going to front a lot of this cost. They invite people. So I love the idea of like a study break. You go downstairs and you have coffee with just people in the community. They're not there because they're connected to your church. They're just there for coffee. But then you can connect them to the church that, oh yeah, that one right over there. I'm the pastor of that church. And, I've seen you in here sometimes. And can I pray with you? That sort of stuff. So these are creative ways to really rethink the way that offices are done in the church culture. So should you office off-site? Well, that depends, but you should think through it.
Man, what a great discussion. A little different perspective on something that we really haven't talked about much.
Oddly.
I will give Josh credit for this one. It was his idea. So good idea,
Thank you,
Josh.
Much. Yep.
You know what's also a good idea? Go check
Church
out.
Answers.
Well, Church Answers University. Let's talk about that today.
All right.
Church Answers University offers an exciting and innovative path toward ministry training and certification. It is affordable. It is accessible. It is attainable. Not everyone can or should go to seminary. We're certainly big fans of seminaries here. Both Josh and I are graduates. But it's not necessarily for everyone. And a certification is certainly a more affordable way, more accessible way, more attainable way to get the same kind of training. Well, we have that at Church Answers University. So we have certification in women's ministry. We have a certification in Christian ministry. So it's a great tool for bivocational pastors to get trained, really any pastor that's looking to further education, or even people in your church. This is something that we have put our life group leaders through. So go check out churchanswers.university. We've offered payment plans with tuition. It's self-paced. And, well, guess what? Books are included. Why don't people do that? Why don't institutions do that? For this payment, when you enroll at Church Answers University, and you got everything you need. I'll just say that you got everything you need. So churchanswers.university.
Well, very good. And in our last episode, we asked people to share pictures socially on social media of their bulletins. I would love to see a picture of your office. Sam shared his on YouTube. I'd love to see a picture of yours. Go ahead and post that to our social media account. In fact, I'll post a picture of mine. And we'll just kind of see. Love to see your office and share that with you. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.